This morning, America's First News starts right after this. As a small business owner, you need protection for your physical and financial assets. From general and professional liability insurance to business owners and commercial auto policies, Geico can help. Go to GeicoCommercial.com for your free quote and see how much you could save today.
From Compass Media Networks, this is America's First News. This morning, with your host, Gordon Deal.
Taliban talks canceled. Good morning, I'm Gordon Deal, along with Jennifer Kashenka on this Monday, September 9. Thanks for being with us, and here's what we have for you this hour.
A secret meeting planned with the Afghan Taliban over the weekend at a presidential retreat is causing controversy for a couple of reasons.
After devastating the Bahamas and inundating the North Carolina coast, Hurricane Dorian made its way to Canada, where it's been downgraded.
The CDC says lung disease tied to vaping has been found in 33 states and blamed for 5 deaths.
And as college begins again, it's time to consider Greek life, which can, at times, involve the dangerous hazing of pledges.
People might say this is, 1 or 2 deaths or 3 or 4 deaths a year, but I think we have to look at what we're tasking fraternities with doing, right? We're taking young men at the crucial points in their life when they first start college and trying to teach them to become leaders. And so I think there's kind of like, for a lot of people, this is a dereliction of responsibility. Chris
Quintana at USA Today on fraternities slow to change practices. He's here in about 25 minutes. President Trump is facing criticism on a couple of fronts with regards to the war in Afghanistan. Republican and Democratic leaders are unhappy about a secret meeting that was planned with the Taliban at Camp David over the weekend. The meeting ultimately was canceled after the group carried out a car bomb attack in Afghanistan late last week that left 12 people dead, including 1 American. Illinois Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger flew Air Force missions in Iraq. He appeared on CBS's Face the Nation.
The Taliban is a stateless organization that oppresses women, that kills innocent people, that blows up people without consideration, whether they're children, no matter what religion they are or anything. And to put them at a place of honor in Camp David shouldn't have happened. So he's right to cancel it, and I hope he never reschedules.
Critics don't like the idea of bringing members of the Taliban to Camp David, where U.S. officials planned their response to the 9/11 attacks. The Taliban harbored Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda. The Trump administration and leaders of the Taliban have been in peace talks for months. In response to the canceled talks, by the way, the Taliban said yesterday that more American lives will be lost. After causing devastation across the Bahamas and hammering the North Carolina coast, Dorian arrived in Canada over the weekend. The National Hurricane Center said Dorian, now a post-tropical cyclone, was heading to the north-northwest, roughly up the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Dorian made its 4th landfall Saturday evening about 15 miles south of Halifax, Nova Scotia. A massive crane toppled onto a high-rise that was under construction in downtown Halifax. Meanwhile, authorities in the Bahamas are scrambling to find shelter for tens of thousands of people left homeless by a storm that struck with Category 5 force 1 week ago. Mark Green is administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development.
There are parts of Abaco and the Bahamas that don't show a great deal of damage, and then there are clusters and communities that were devastated, almost as though nuclear bombs were dropped on them. That's how great the suffering is and the devastation is.
The storm has been blamed for nearly 50 deaths, but government officials in the Bahamas say they expect that number to still rise. A powerful typhoon in Japan has left more than 100 flights canceled, more than 1 million homes without power, and transport disrupted across major cities. More from this morning's Mike Gavin.
The Japan Meteorological Agency says the typhoon, which made landfall earlier today in the coastal city of Chiba, brought heavy rain and winds of 120 miles per hour. The storm then moved over Tokyo, where major subway stations were crammed full of commuters, all stuck waiting for bullet trains and subway services that had shut down. The train services gradually resumed mid-morning, but all lines are still experiencing delays. CNN says highways were shut down, departing ships were canceled at Tokyo Port, and rail lines closed yesterday and today. Gordon.
Thank you, Mike. Ahead of the typhoon, officials issued storm surge, flood, and landslide warnings and asked the public to avoid going outdoors. An evacuation advisory was issued last night for about 150,000 people. It's 11 minutes now after the hour. On This Morning, America's First News.
Michigan is one of the best places in the country to do business, but you don't have to take our word for it. Take Evan Lyles, CEO of Roush Enterprises, instead.
For the people that are involved in product development, there couldn't be more unique and exciting opportunities that are really going to shape the future of the world. It's a really exciting time to be in Michigan.
Big things are happening in business here. Find out why by searching Michigan Pure Opportunity.
Dell has something extra for small businesses, up to 45% off during their semi-annual sale. It's a perfect time to update to Windows 10 with huge deals on business computers featuring Intel Core processors, plus free shipping on everything. Call Small Business Technology Advisors who can help you achieve your business goals affordably with low monthly payments on the right tech for you. Just call 877-BUY-DELL. That's 877-BUY-DELL or visit Dell.com/business deals for semi-annual savings.
Thanks for spending time with us. Welcome into Monday. There were some notable trends in the government's recent jobs report. Behind the basic numbers of 130,000 jobs added in August and the unemployment rate holding steady at an extremely low 3.7%. Analysis from Ben Castleman, economics reporter at the New York Times. Ben, what are we seeing?
I think what we're really seeing here is the benefits of the strong labor market pulling people into the labor force. We've seen, recent retirees thinking, hey, maybe I'll come back in. We've seen people who are raising kids say, hey, there are job opportunities out there, and maybe the company's willing to be flexible on hours or let me work from home or work around my schedule. So there are opportunities out there to get into the labor force that just don't exist when times are not as strong.
I believe then you just answered my question, which was going to be based on this story. You asked, with the unemployment rate so low, where are companies finding workers? And this is where?
Yeah, they're finding them from outside the labor force. If you look at the people who are newly employed this month or over the past several months, about 3/4 of them were out of the labor force the previous month. That means they were not actively looking for jobs. And there's a simple reason for that, right? There just aren't very many unemployed workers right now. There aren't very many people actively looking for work, so companies have to find a way to entice people in who weren't actively looking.
Explain, if there are any, the manufacturing concerns right now.
Yeah, so the manufacturing sector we know has been weakening pretty substantially. We saw kind of a boomlet in manufacturing in the first couple of years of the Trump administration, but that's really slowed now. It's clearly been dragged down by the trade tensions. It's been dragged down by slowing global growth. It was positive this month. Manufacturers added 3,000 jobs. But they revised down the growth for June and July, and 3,000 isn't much. So it's pretty weak on the manufacturing side right now.
All right. So other than that, are there areas where we seem to be losing jobs?
We're not. We lost jobs in retail, which has been a consistent theme, right? I think that's probably less about the state of the sort of macro economy than about the state of the retail sector specifically and the competition they're seeing, from online sales. Oil and gas industry has been cutting some jobs. The weakness in the global economy has been pushing down gas prices, and that leads to job cuts in the oil patch here in the U.S. But, broadly speaking, we're seeing job growth pretty much across the economy. It's just slower job growth than we were seeing a year ago.
I'm speaking with Ben Castleman, economics reporter at the New York Times, behind the main numbers of the Labor Department's August jobs report. How about wage growth among the different earners?
Yeah, so wage growth looked pretty good in August. I'm always a little cautious here. The monthly numbers, they move around a lot. I don't like to read too much into it. But, what we've seen is that wage growth is now topping 3% a year and has been for a while now. And it's been fastest for supervisory workers. That's for everyday hourly workers who aren't managers. And we've been seeing evidence that the fastest wage growth lately has been kind of at the bottom of the pay scale. And so, it does seem like, again, as the labor market gets stronger, companies are being forced to pay more, and they're particularly being forced to pay more to recruit some of those workers, down at the bottom who didn't benefit as much early in the recovery.
How about the census hiring that you referenced?
Yeah, so this is an important factor. The Census Bureau, next year, of course, is the 2020 census, but the Census Bureau has to staff up some ahead of that in order to do some preparatory work. And this month they hired about 25,000 workers. Those are temporary jobs. They're going to disappear in a month or two. And so it really probably makes sense when we think about this jobs report, when we think about the 130,000 jobs that were added, to kind of set those aside. They're temporary jobs. They don't pay particularly well. And so, then that starts to look like more like 100,000 jobs were added this month, which is, a bit of a disappointment.
Thanks, Ben. Ben Castleman, economics reporter at the New York Times. It's 20 minutes after the hour on This Morning. Jennifer Kashenka is here with more of America's First News.
Gordon, President Trump's weekend tweet canceling secret meetings at Camp David with the Taliban and Afghan leaders just days before the anniversary of the September 11th attacks is the latest example of a commander-in-chief willing to take a big risk in pursuit of a foreign policy victory only to see it dashed. What had seemed like an imminent deal to end the war has unraveled, with Trump and the Taliban blaming each other for the collapse of nearly a year of U.S.-Taliban negotiations in Doha, Qatar. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo spoke with ABC.
President Trump said that's enough. We're not going to do that. We're not going to reward that behavior, and broke it off.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says this plan wasn't a good one to begin with.
For the U.S. to meet with the Taliban and not have the leader of Afghanistan to meet with the Taliban is something that's doomed to failure.
The insurgents are promising more bloodshed. Rescuers are searching for 4 crew members of a cargo ship that overturned and caught fire near a port on the Georgia coast. But the efforts ran into trouble amid the flames and instability of the ship. The Coast Guard says 20 were safely evacuated before rescuers determined the situation, as smoke and flames appeared, was too risky to go farther inside the vessel. And the Golden Ray cargo ship's problems began in the early morning yesterday when it listed heavily and rolled on its side near the port of Brunswick. Thousands of students formed human chains in schools across Hong Kong to show solidarity to push for democratic reforms after violent weekend clashes. The silent protest comes as the Hong Kong government condemns the illegal behavior of radical protesters and tells Washington to stay out of its affairs. A day after acquiring former Steelers malcontent Antonio Brown, the reigning Super Bowl champion Patriots showed they might not even need him, getting 341 yards and 3 touchdown passes from 42-year-old Tom Brady to beat Pittsburgh last night 33-3. Here's the first touchdown from NBC.
And then Brady shoots one to Josh Gordon. Gordon breaking tackles, touchdown, New England.
Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger completed 27 of 47 passes for 277 yards and an interception.
Beat the Steelers by 30.
I didn't think it would be quite that. Yeah.
Sending a message.
42 years old.
Right. Right. Collecting Social Security. 23 minutes after the hour on This Morning, America's First News. Glad you're with us. Marijuana tourism is booming in Las Vegas, as it has in Colorado, Oregon, and elsewhere. But what's allowed and what's legal at airports and hotels can feel like a confounding set of contradictions. Wall Street Journal travel writer Scott McCartney has some examples. You'll need a spreadsheet for this one. Scott, explain.
It is all over the map, and what's really interesting is I think we're getting to a critical mass of travelers. I mean, marijuana tourism has been a thing, but people go into business conferences in Vegas or whatever. It's all right there, and in big cities, Los Angeles, Denver, Las Vegas, Seattle, Portland, Boston, you name it, and coming to Illinois in a few months. So people are taking it home, and they're going to the airport with it, and it is a bit of a legal quagmire as to what's legal where and what's illegal once you cross, some line in the sand.
Wow. So, I mean, what's a traveler to do? Because, I mean, it's complicated. You point out, for example, recreational marijuana is legal in Oregon, but you can't fly from a city to another city within Oregon with pot.
Yeah, no, Oregon was actually my favorite example because so what happens anywhere is that if the TSA finds you with marijuana in any quantity, it is a federal offense to marijuana is not legal federally. It's a federal offense to take it across state lines. It's actually against regulations for airlines to knowingly transport somebody with what the federal government considers are illegal drugs. So TSA will stop you, and they do. You know, people have to be really careful here because you think that the X-ray machine's looking for metal, but it's not. I mean, it is, but also looking for organic substances that could be explosives, and so that's why sometimes food gets flagged or chocolate chips or things like that.
Yeah. And you gave the example of Las Vegas too, so you can go right from the airport to a dispensary in Las Vegas, get some perfectly legal marijuana, but if you're leaving the next day and you have some left over, you either got to smoke it or leave it behind?
Yeah, so marijuana, in recreational marijuana in limited quantities is legal in Las Vegas, but it's not legal at the airport. And the airport has big green bins out front, amnesty boxes, where you can dispose of it before you walk in the door because it actually is not legal once you walk in the door.
That's something. Scott McCartney, Wall Street Journal travel columnist who's based in Dallas. Reminder, by the way, we can connect on social media. You can friend us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at This Morning Show. You can follow me directly on Twitter as well with the username at Gordon Deal. It's 30 minutes now after the hour on This Morning, America's First News.
This human resources professional is crushing it thanks to Kronos. And this is his hype song.
I've got HR, payroll, talent, and time.
I'm on the top, I'm gonna rise up. Now we are
engaging all the best people.
Blast off to the front of the field. This is
Kronos. HR solutions for the modern workforce. Learn more at kronos.com/HR swagger.
America's First News is online all the time. Follow us on Twitter at This Morning Show. Like us on Facebook or send us an email this morning at compassmedianetworks.com.
Thanks for spending time with us. Welcome into Monday, September 9. Gordon Deal, Jennifer Kushenka. Some of our top stories and headlines. President Trump cancels talks with the Taliban. Congress returns today after its August recess. Former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford enters the Republican presidential primary. Strong winds have raised wildfire concerns in Southern California. At the movies, It Chapter 2 won the weekend. Rafa Nadal won the U.S. Open. And a confession 45 years in the making for a bar in Nebraska. That story in about 20 minutes. Every year for the past 2 decades, at least one young man has died in connection with fraternity hazing, whether it's alcohol poisoning, extreme physical labor, or physical injuries. Dozens of lives have been lost in the name of fraternal kinship. Yet rush continues. Pledge classes carry out antics, and Greek initiations roll on. Supporters of fraternities say the deaths are isolated incidents. In 2017, the annual death toll at fraternities spiked to 4. Reviving an old discussion, are the benefits of fraternity membership worth the lives of young adults? It's a story by Chris Quintana at USA Today. Chris set this up.
People might say this is, 1 or 2 deaths or 3 or 4 deaths a year, but I think we have to look at what we're tasking fraternities with doing, right? We're taking young men at the crucial points in their life when they first start college and trying to teach them to become leaders. And so I think there's kind of like, for a lot of people, this is a dereliction of responsibility, especially for parents who are putting their students into these organizations with the hope that they're going to emerge better leaders, stronger, more capable, and instead they, meet an untimely end. So I think that's kind of what's at stake here.
What has happened in a couple of these fraternities at colleges that stood out for you?
Well, I think it's these hazing incidents, right? Like it's these rituals that you're supposed to overcome to prove that you're part of the group, and often what happens is that these go way too far. We've seen it with the case of Timothy Piazza, the Penn State incident. But often, this has been something that's been going on for a long time. I talked with a family who lost their child in 2005, and it was remarkably similar to Timothy Piazza in that it took place in a basement, and there were brothers around who ultimately didn't do enough to prevent his death. When the opportunity was there.
Where were the guys, or where was it happening? Where guys were doing calisthenics in some basement that had been backed up with sewage or something?
Yeah, that was Chico State, if I recall correctly. Yeah.
And so what happened there?
Well, so he was pledging for fraternity, and this was part of a long process, according to his mother, Debbie Smith. And, they were forced to drink water. They had fans on them. They, at one point, soiled themselves and were forced to keep going to try to, prove that they were good enough to be part of this organization. And, it just proved too much for his body, and it shut down.
What do the parent organizations of these fraternities say, or perhaps the schools themselves, about what's being done to kind of minimize the danger?
Well, it definitely depends on the school. So schools like Penn State that have had, kind of a horrific incident like this are more quick to crack down. Places like Clemson also have, more measures in place, and, kind of uniformly they say on paper that this is unacceptable and, hazing is unacceptable. But I think, people are still kind of have a desire for more, because there's Greek life is still out there, and people are still kind of worried that it's going to happen somewhere else where there hasn't been a tragedy, right? So going back to Debbie Smith, the mother of Matthew Carrington, the student who died in 2005, every year, she's just like on pins and needles because she feels like it's going to happen again somewhere.
We're speaking with Chris Quintana, national education reporter at USA Today, and he's written a piece entitled "Young Men Have Died in Fraternities Every Year for 2 Decades, but Frats Are Slow to Change." You raised the point in your story asking, with such risks, why join at all? What's the answer?
Well, yeah. So we've talked with a couple of students who said, there's this kind of like immediate sense of camaraderie. There is a wide alumni network that people have access to that lasts a lifetime, right? So there are a lot of benefits potentially to joining these organizations, which makes the risks kind of so much higher, right? And kind of like the stakes that much more stark, because people think they're going to get this sense of camaraderie, this sense of family that lasts a lifetime. And, they may end up getting a lot of bad experiences instead.
Yeah. Is there an anticipation that some other tragic event is going to happen ultimately here because the hazing likely will continue?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, but if you do go look back at the 2 decades worth of data that we gathered, and, there's this Professor Hank Muir who has been looking at this for a very long time. I mean, it happens yearly, and I was also talking with a college administrator who, this organization had been around for 100 years, and back in 1919, they were even trying to figure out the issue of hazing back then. So I don't know that the issue is going to go away or what will be done, but it seems like the stakes are still there.
Thanks, Chris. Chris Quintana at USA Today. 20 minutes now in front of the hour on This Morning, America's First News. Thanks for spending time with us. Welcome into Monday. Beyond the headlines now, this morning's Mike Gavin is here with a look at some of the other stories you'll be talking about this morning.
Good morning. Well, all of us who are married or in long-term relationships like to think we'd go above and beyond for our partners, but this guy puts us all to shame. A photo that went viral on Twitter recently reportedly shows a picture of a man who stood for 6 hours on a plane ride just so a woman who appears to be his wife could use his seat to lie down. The Twitter user who captured the scene praised the man for his actions, writing, "Now that is love." While the post didn't include any details on how long the overall flight was, where they were flying from, and what airline it happened to be on, that didn't stop Twitter users from commenting on the supposedly romantic move. Some agreed that it was a romantic move, but many others responded with shock and disbelief, claiming that they could never do something like that. Some wondered why the woman couldn't just lie across the man instead of forcing him to stand stand for so long. One user chimed in that they were never that in love and that they hope someday to be so in love so that they even consider that as an option. I mean,
That's funny.
I have to say, 6 hours is a long time, but I mean, I probably wouldn't mind standing for a little while on a plane. Like, that has like an excuse to stand up on a plane for a while because, when those coat seats just kill me by, with my knees and everything.
Now, the problem is when you're standing for that long, your butt is only, 10 inches from somebody else's face across the aisle. That's
right.
Do you keep moving away, one row of seats to
yes.
You're blocking somebody's view. Like, I don't want to see somebody standing there, like, on my shoulder for 6 hours
and
either.
The people going up and down to go to the bathroom, you're blocking, that kind of thing.
And then you're pressing your pelvis, like, into somebody's face when somebody passes by you. Like, it's just...
And what happens when the drink card comes? I guess you've got to try and duck in, I guess.
Excuse me, honey, can I sit down for 30 seconds to allow the drink card to pass?
So those are things we also have to consider.
Yep.
And, Gordon, how can there be no laws if you're not drinking Claws? White Claw brand hard seltzers have been exploding in popularity this year, so much so that the brand confirmed that they are suffering a nationwide shortage. The brand's official Twitter account tried to be reassuring to freaked-out drinkers, saying that they have the best team in the business working on the problem. That wasn't enough to calm drinkers looking for White Claws on the first NFL weekend of the year. One Philadelphia woman tweeted that she can only blame herself for the game day shortage, since she's the one who drank most of them. Another person joked that if you're having a Popeye's chicken sandwich and washing it down with a White Claw this weekend, you've won the lottery. According to Fox News, there's good reason why the company might be having trouble keeping up with the demand. White Claw sales were up 283% in July of this year as compared to the same period last summer.
Last summer, I didn't even know White Claw.
Yeah, literally, it was Memorial Day weekend the first time I saw one, and I was kind of intrigued by it. The low carbs, of course, right? I said, this is interesting. I've never seen these before, and now they are everywhere, now out everywhere, apparently.
So White Claw has the best team in the business.
I guess.
Just not at anticipating sales.
Yeah.
At fixing sales on the back end, apparently.
Yeah. Well, as soon as they catch up, the trend will end. You know how that works.
Right. By the way, how come you are not taking credit for the Collinsworth slide? I saw you tweet about that last night. It's back now?
We should both take credit for that. We were both demanding that should happen last week, so good for us.
The NFL or the NBC, whatever.
The only good thing about NFL Sunday yesterday for us, the Collinsworth slide.
13 minutes now in front of the hour.
Dell has something extra for small businesses, up to 45% off during their semi-annual sale. It's a perfect time to update to Windows 10 with huge deals on business computers featuring Intel Core processors, plus free shipping on everything. Call Small Business Technology Advisors who can help you achieve your business goals affordably with low monthly payments on the right tech for you. Just call 877-BUY-DELL. That's 877-BUY-DELL or visit Dell.com/business deals for semi-annual savings.
Thanks for spending time with us. The CDC is investigating more than 450 possible cases of a potentially serious lung disease linked to use of e-cigarettes. Cases have been reported in 33 states, 5 deaths linked to the lung illness. The CDC said the lung illnesses are likely associated with exposure to chemicals used in e-cigarettes, commonly known as vaping. The CDC said while it investigates, people should consider not using e-cigarettes. AL.com in Alabama says those that do vape and experience symptoms such as cough, shortness of breath, chest pain, nausea, vomiting, fatigue, fever, or weight loss are advised to contact their doctor immediately. Some patients have reported their symptoms developed over a few days. Others said several weeks. Other recommendations: if you do vape, do not buy products off the street. For example, e-cigarettes containing THC or other cannabinoids. It's 8 minutes now in front of the hour on This Morning. Jennifer Kashenka is back with more of America's First News.
Gordon, Afghans are bracing for a possible new wave of Taliban violence after President Trump abruptly called off talks with the insurgent group, which vows to continue its fight against what it calls foreign occupation. Trump's surprise weekend announcement came shortly before a string of highly sensitive days in Afghanistan, including Monday's anniversary of the killing of an anti-Taliban commander and Wednesday's 9/11 anniversary. It was not immediately clear whether the talks will resume, ending nearly 18 years of fighting. 1 week after Hurricane Dorian devastated the Bahamas, residents are struggling amid the ruins, with many forced to seek refuge far from their shattered homes. As the death toll from the storm hits 45 in the islands, Captain Mark Shepard is with the Coast Guard.
We have seen a definite decline over the last couple of days in any type of search and rescue. and it's transitioned more into medical situations and then into more evacuation than search and rescue type actions.
Dorian caused severe damage in eastern Canada after cutting a destructive path through the Bahamas and going up the U.S. East Coast. Congress returns for the fall session today with pressure mounting on Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to address gun violence, election security, and other issues. President Trump has not fully explained what he'd like to see Congress accomplish, and McConnell has been reluctant to venture too far from the president. Minnesota Senator and Democratic presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar told ABC the Senate needs to move on gun legislation.
I think it's obscene that while we have ordinary people showing such extraordinary courage, protecting their babies, running to these scenes of gun shootings, that there is not the courage in the White House to get this done.
Congress is also facing a September 30th deadline to keep the government funded. Rafa Nadal survived a heroic Daniil Medvedev to fight to claim an epic 5-set win and a 4th U.S. Open title.
I would love to be the one who have more, yes, but I will not. I really believe that I will not be happier or less happy if that happens or not happen. What gives you the happiness is the personal satisfaction that you give it your best.
With the win, Nadal moves within one Grand Slam crown of matching Roger Federer's record of 20. At 33, he becomes the second oldest U.S. Open champion behind Australian Ken Rosewall, who was 35 when he won in 1970.
Nadal is a machine.
And he loves it. You know, his passion is just unmatched.
He never takes a point off. He's one of those guys.
Yep.
Thanks, Jen. 6 minutes in front of the hour. Thanks for being with us. A bar in Lincoln, Nebraska recently received an envelope that reportedly contained $500 and a letter from an anonymous source apologizing for breaking a sign. The bar was shocked as the sign hadn't recently been damaged. Zoo Bar has been open for 46 years, according to 1011 Now Television. They reportedly received an envelope with cash inside and a note that read, 45 years ago, I broke the Zoo Bar sign. Here's my restitution. The envelope had no return address. The bar's owner was surprised to receive the letter and wondered what prompted the anonymous sign breaker to finally try to make amends. Pete Waters took ownership of the bar 18 years ago, but he first started working there as a bartender 33 years ago. By that point, the sign-breaking incident was already 12 years in the past. That'll do it for this hour. For Jennifer Kashenka, I'm Gordon Deal. Thanks for listening to This Morning, America's First News.
Michigan is one of the best places in the country to do business, but you don't have to take our word for it. Take Patty Poppies, President and CEO of Consumers Energy, instead.
All of the innovation that's occurring around robotics, AI, it's happening here in Michigan. We have chemical companies, we have pharmaceutical companies, we have medical device manufacturers. Michigan is a magnet for innovators and dreamers.
Big things are happening in business here. Find out why by searching Michigan Pure Opportunity.